Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Eighth Nerve. I'm Ella Orhoff, and I'm a 10th grader. I'm doing this podcast for a class I have, IB Personal Project. So, the idea of it is that you basically get a semester of school to work on like one big passion project. And I decided to do a podcast. Hence the name of the class. I had to make this project personal to me, which we will definitely dive into more in like later in this episode. In this podcast, we'll be exploring regenerative medicine, diving into the story of a patient similar to people in the future who could possibly benefit from regenerative medicine. And we will be offering ideas on how people like you, the listener, could possibly help. Before we start, I just have to say that this podcast is strictly for informational and entertainment purposes. The content I offer is not professional medical advice and should not be used to replace the input of a licensed physician or another qualified healthcare professional. And just use the information provided in this podcast to your own discretion. So, that being said, in today's episode, we will specifically be exploring the story of a patient who went through a brain surgery last March. He had an acoustic neuroma, which is a benign brain tumor growing on his vestibulocochlear nerve. His specifically was on his left side. That nerve is also called his eighth cranial nerve, which is the name of where the name of this podcast comes from. And kind of circling back to the reason that this podcast is personal to me, which I briefly mentioned just a minute ago, is because this person is my dad. So let me introduce you to my dad.
Hi Ella, how are you doing tonight?
Good, how about you?
I'm good. I just want to start by saying how excited I am to be here with you. And I was going to ask you what the eighth nerve meant, but you just explained that.
Yes.
But I do have one other question for you. What exactly is regenerative medicine? Because I know you've been talking about it a lot, and I'm just kind of curious what it is.
So, yeah, we're gonna dive into that way more in the second episode, but basically the idea of it is that like it's medicine that will like essentially like regenerate your nerve that so you like your nerve got cut during surgery, so it would like regenerate that nerve and like restore the function of it. So that would be like how it ties into you, but we will definitely get into that way more during the next episode.
Awesome, awesome.
Yeah, okay. So I'm gonna start. Can you just tell us a bit about yourself, like your jobs and your hobbies and stuff?
Yeah, so my name's Joe Rohrhoff. My jobs and my hobbies. My most important job is being a dad. I'm a dad. I've got two beautiful daughters and a beautiful wife and a couple nasty dogs that we take care of. And so, being at home with them is one of my favorite things to do. But if you're asking what I do to make money, because unfortunately being a dad doesn't pay as well as it probably should, but I'm a teacher. So I'm a teacher. I teach middle school. I'm an eighth grade social studies teacher. I've been teaching. This is my 20th year that I have been teaching. And like I said, eighth grade social studies, I teach American history. And I love my job. I love, working with younger kids. I'm also a coach. I coach football at the varsity level. And I've been a basketball coach for a long time. I'm going to be the freshman basketball coach in the district where I work for this upcoming season. So those are some of the things that keep me happy and keep me busy.
Yeah, that's awesome. Can you tell us about your own podcast real quick?
Yeah, so I've got a podcast called the Beyond Standards podcast, and that is about teaching. It's another teacher, Jeff Bologna, and I started it. Gosh, it's been I think 2 years now since we started it. And we've recorded probably about 50 episodes of it. And what we do is we talk about just basically the reality of what it's like to be a teacher. None of, like it's truly from a teacher's perspective. It's kind of the kind of talk that you would hear like in the teacher's lounge, not the stuff you would say in front of kids, not the stuff you would say in front of your principal or your boss or the superintendent, but it's just kind of the reality of what it's like to be a teacher. So that's what our podcast is about. We did it for about a year and a half, and then as we're about to talk about, I had a little medical issue, so it's been on hold for about 6-7 months now, something like that. Okay. And that will be hopefully back on the air soon. I'm just getting back to the person I used to be before the surgery, and I've been busy coaching football, and now I've got a little bit more time on my hands. So I will hopefully be publishing that again. It's called the Beyond Standards podcast. Hopefully be publishing that again in the next couple months.
Yeah, all right. So you're a busy guy. Have a lot going
I,
on. Yeah, so can you just start by telling us kind of the story of your diagnosis?
yeah. So it all started over the summer. It was August of 2024. So not too long ago when I was first diagnosed. But I noticed that when I was listening to my headphones, I was out walking the dogs and I was listening to my headphones and I noticed that one ear was louder than the other. Like I could hear more. And then if I took the headphones and I put it up to my right ear, I could hear great. And if I put it up to my left ear, everything just sounded a little muffled. And so I had a checkup with my doctor. I wasn't like panicking. I just figured I'm getting old. I'm 43 years old. My hearing, maybe my hearing start to go a little bit. And I was, upset about that, but I went to the doctor and he basically confirmed, yep, your hearing is not what it used to be. Go, eventually first they sent me to Costco to get an audiogram to test my hearing. It was not good, but they sent me to an ENT, someone that specializes in ear, nose, and throat, like specializes in understanding problems with hearing. And I went to the ENT and they kind of passed me around from one person to the next. I was seeing specialist after specialist because they just couldn't figure out exactly what was going on. And it was actually the day before Thanksgiving, so not even a year ago now, where I had an MRI that morning. And I had an MRI followed by, when you get an MRI, one of the options they give you is you can take your scan on a disc. So the doctor told me, yeah, just get your scan on a disc, bring it up here afterwards, and we'll take a look at it. So I brought it up there, not thinking much of it. I was just thinking that they were going to tell me my hearing sucked and I needed a hearing aid, stuff that I already knew. But they wanted to kind of rule out some definitely more serious possibilities of what it could be that's causing my hearing. It's pretty young to be losing your hearing at the level that I was losing it. And so I brought it in and I remember sitting in the doctor's office and I just remember him looking at, if you've ever seen like an MRI, it's like black and white and it just like, you can't really tell what's going on. And he's like, yep, this is your brain right here. And he's like, oh, yep, you got a tumor right there. And he told me that I had a brain tumor. And I was just obviously in the unknown at that time. Give you the short version of it. I basically went to specialist after, went to another specialist after that, someone that specialized in the type of tumor I had. I had what was called an acoustic neuroma. It's also called a vestibular schwannoma. They're the same thing. And once I found that out, I sought out the expertise of people that deal with it a lot. I saw two specialists. I saw a doctor at the Michigan Ear Institute. I saw Dr. Welch and Dr. Thompson at the University of Michigan. And ultimately, they both basically agreed on the same thing, that the tumor had to be removed and it was going to require brain surgery to get rid of the tumor.
Yeah, all right. So pretty quick. It happened pretty quick. I remember when you first came home the day before Thanksgiving. We were hosting Thanksgiving that year, so it was crazy. So I just remember you told me that day, the day that you found out about it, and it was just a day like full of emotions. It was crazy. And you were kind of contemplating like, hey, like should I like tell like my mom? Should I tell like, my family? Like, they're all coming over tomorrow for Thanksgiving, so, like, can you kinda tell us about what you decided to do there?
Yeah, so when I got home, I remember we had my sister-in-law, your aunt, was over, and, like, I remember the car ride home, like, what do I do? Do I call my wife? Do I call Jessica and tell her? Do I tell her when I get home? The next thing I knew, I was just lost in my thoughts, walking inside and went straight upstairs to my room and, texted Jessica, like, "Hey, I need to talk to you." And sorry, I'm getting a little emotional thinking about this, but I texted her and she came upstairs immediately knowing like something's probably wrong because he was just at the doctor looking at this MRI scan and I told her and we decided that we were going to tell you and your sister
Mm.
that night and then we were going to kind of hold off on telling anybody else. Do you remember when I told you and Maddie?
Yeah, you told me first because Maddie wasn't home. Maddie's my
Yeah.
sister. She wasn't home, so, yeah, I found out, and then Maddie found out later that day, but I definitely remember.
Yeah. What was your reaction? I mean, obviously sad, but
Yeah,
what do you
I mean,
remember
it
going
was
through your
just
head?
I didn't really know what to think because I didn't know anything about that, like, we've never had like, we're very lucky, like, we've never had anything crazy like that happen to us, we've never had, like, our in our immediate family, we've never had some, like, crazy diagnosis like that just out of the blue because it's not at all what we were expecting, like, I don't think any of us were expecting, "Hey, you have a brain tumor," you know? It was just
Right.
it was crazy, and I just didn't know what to think at first, and then I think once I was able to collect myself, I could kinda tell, I could just kinda like, I know I did some research on it, I'm sure you did too,
Yeah.
and, like, it kinda calmed me down, but it kinda didn't, so, yeah, it was all crazy.
Yeah.
Um
I remember when the doctor first told me that I had a brain tumor, and I remember thinking to myself, and, like, now that you've, like, looked into the brain and you know so much about the brain and the surgery now that you've researched for this project, but I remember thinking to myself, knowing nothing about any of this, "Oh, I have a tumor in there? Like,
Mhm.
they can just remove the tumor, and the tumor's probably the thing getting in the way of my hearing, and I'll be able to hear again." I remember thinking, like, and I'm generally a pretty optimistic person, like, "Oh, they're just gonna remove it," there was obviously the news was not quite that good that they could
Right.
just remove it and
Yeah.
everything would be back to perfect. But I will say this, I will say with an acoustic neuroma, there are probably people listening to this podcast that either themselves or know loved ones that had a brain tumor, and the doctors will even tell you this, if you have a brain tumor, this is the one to get. It is a
Mhm.
benign brain tumor, not cancerous, and obviously it can cause some damage. I'm sure we'll get into some of that damage that it can cause, but like there's no such thing as a good brain tumor, but this is the best one that you can get if you're going to get one.
Correct, because just real quickly, it's not, like, on the actual brain, you know? It's still considered a brain tumor, but it's not growing on your actual brain, so that makes a huge difference, of course,
Correct. It
for
is
removing it.
pushing up against the brain stem. It pushes up against the brain stem so they don't
Mhm.
have to go like inside your brain, which they do on
Right,
some surgeries. I know that
right.
for people that have had brain surgery, it's been a lot more invasive than the one that I had to experience.
Yeah. So next, I was just wondering if you knew any, like, fun facts about your brain tumor, and by that, I mean, like, what size was it? How fast was it growing? Stuff like that.
Yeah. So, um, I wouldn't call them fun, but I'll try to make them as much fun as possible.
Right, right.
Uh, the tumor size was about 2 centimeters, which is about the size of a ping pong ball. So it's not perfectly round, but round like a ping pong ball, or sorry, the size of a ping pong ball. And like I said before, is pressing up against the brain stem. As far as how fast it was growing, when I first was diagnosed, they told me that their best guess, and it was truly a guess, was that it was probably there for at least 5, maybe 10 or 15 years because these things grow at different paces. And I only had one MRI. I had the one MRI that they saw, so they had nothing to compare it to. Now, when I went in and had the actual surgery, it had actually grown quite a bit since the MRI. So the doctor suspected that it was either now growing a lot faster than it had in the past, which is possible, or that it was just more recent, that maybe it had only been a couple years and it just happened to be a fast growing version of that tumor. Yeah, and another kind of interesting fact that I found out, we're Detroit Lions fans here in the house, and when the doctor described it to me, he told me that it was because I didn't acoustic neuroma, like that doesn't mean anything to me, but it was the same tumor that Kelly Stafford had. That's the wife of former Lions quarterback Matt Stafford. And, I had remembered that she had had brain surgery and that she had this brain tumor, but I didn't know anything about it. But that actually helped me a lot when I went home, and it helped me when I was describing it to other people when I told about friends and family this, like, yeah, just look up the thing that Kelly Stafford has. Like, you
Mhm.
don't need to write down acoustic neuroma. It's what Kelly Stafford had. And so that's kind of following her story because she was very public about her story and what she went through. That was another thing that was helpful for me.
Yeah, and I actually forgot about that. You actually just, like, unlocked a memory in me. I remember, like, after your diagnosis, I actually, like, scrolled back on her Instagram and, like, looked at all her posts from around the time and, like, just kinda, like, looked over her recovery because she had the same brain surgeon as you too. She also went to U of M for her brain surgery. So, yeah, that was just you just unlocked a memory in me, so I just thought I should
Yeah.
mention that. Okay, moving on. How much time was there, like, between your diagnosis and your surgery, and, like, how did you go on living your life during that time?
Gosh. Well, the time's easy. So Thanksgiving is when I was diagnosed, and the surgery ended up happening March 21st. Now, there's a lot that happened in those 5 months or so. Obviously, there's the phase of telling friends and family. which is not easy to do, calling your parents and telling them, calling my parents and my siblings were the toughest to tell what was going on. So that was tough. And then telling my students as a teacher, that was tough. And I kind of struggled with when do I tell my students and how much do I tell my students? I'll say this, I told them I was diagnosed in November. I told them in either December or January. I told them fairly quickly because I had so many doctor's appointments that I had to get this test and that test that I was missing so much school. I decided I'm just going to tell them rather than have them sit there and wonder. So I told my students, my staff, and that was like everyone was so supportive from my family, my immediate family, extended family, my colleagues at work, my students, they were just so supportive and everybody reaching out to me just meant so much to me. The love and support that people pushed upon me was just something that just made me feel really good. Made me feel
Yeah.
really good.
Yeah.
And then there was also, like leading to it, of course, lots of doctor's appointments, but I had surgery, take one, we'll call it, where I was supposed to have surgery on a certain date and I showed up to the hospital on that date and I was like mentally prepared to go through this invasive procedure and miss the, months of work and like I just got all my ducks in a row. And it was just emotionally spent too, because like I remember that last night that we spent together as a family beforehand, and it was just emotionally taxing on me. And then
Mhm.
I get to the hospital that morning, and lo and behold, one of my brain surgeons happened to be sick that day. He got norovirus, was gonna try to kind of power through, made the decision at the last minute not to power through, which I'm actually in hindsight very thankful for.
Right.
Looked up. I've never had norovirus, thankfully, but I've looked up the symptoms of it, and I don't want someone operating on my brain to be going through that. So I was so thankful in the long run that he made that decision. But of course, it was just this emotional roller coaster. And that kind of led up to the actual surgery date. Of a few months after that, I think it was a month and maybe 6 weeks after that initial one, they were able to schedule it again and was able to just I don't know, I guess ease my way towards it. I guess the second time I did it was a little bit easier because I had already been through it mentally, emotionally, and then I just kind of found myself back in the same surgery room, hooked up to the IV, and there I went, away I went.
Yeah, I remember I woke up from school on that. I think it was March 3rd was your initial date. I woke
Yeah,
up for school and I was going into school late that day because it was a seminar day, so I could go in late. And I remember waking up to the text. It was a picture of you like hooked up to the IVs, and I was like I said, I'm like, good luck, blah blah blah. And you like texted back. I don't remember exactly, but you were like, oh well, surgery just got canceled. And so I looked at my phone and I have it on my phone where you can't read your messages unless you unlock your phone, so I was like, "Why is dad texting me? That doesn't make any sense." And so I figured it was just mom, like, on your phone or something, but I opened it up and I was like, "Crap," like, I didn't like, it was insane, and it was just it was like a surreal feeling, like, going to school that day and feeling oh, like, my dad, like, he, like, should have been in brain surgery. Not should have been, I don't wanna say should have been, but, like,
right.
he was scheduled to be in brain surgery right now, but he's not, and it
Yeah,
was just, like, such a weird feeling, like, because the concept of brain surgery is hard to wrap your head around in the first place, but then you
uh-huh.
kinda get to the point where, like, you kind of have to accept it, of course, so, I don't know, getting past going to school that day was just such a weird feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
it was a weird day for me too.
Yeah, I'm sure it was. Okay, yeah. So now the actual surgery. Can you tell us about your surgery? What you kind of remember during and after? I mean, you won't remember much during, but just, tell us the story from that day.
Yeah, not good stuff. So, hooked up to the IV, get whisked away, and I can still picture the surgery room, the operating room at U of M. I remember the bright lights that were just shining and of course, it's something you don't think about. It's a room that looks like no other room you've ever been in if you've never been there before. And just bright lights shining on you. They whisk you in there and I have had several surgeries. I've broken my nose a couple times, had my appendix removed. I have been, put out many times, nothing for anything like super serious like this, but I just remember seeing all those bright lights. I remember being surprised by how many people were in the room. Like, I knew Dr. Thompson and Dr. Welch, the OTO and the neurosurgeon, were both gonna be in there, and there was probably, like, a dozen other people in there just kinda off to the side, like, wondering I don't know what their role was or what they were doing. They were moving me from this one bed to, like, the bed they wheel you in on, they were moving me that to a very hard surface. In the meantime, they had already like turned on the IV drip to relax me a little bit. And then anyone that's been through surgery probably went through something similar if they were knocked out for surgery, where they kind of give you a countdown and they say 10, 9, 8, and then it goes lights out. And that's what I remember. My next memory of that is a terrifying one. I woke up in the OR, and in my own head, the surgery, like, I was knocked out. I didn't realize that time had passed, and I was awake, and I was still like physically, I couldn't move my body. I was like trapped inside my own body, and I was like trying to get all the doctor's attention that, like, hey, like, I'm awake, I'm awake, I'm awake. Like, don't do it. Don't do anything to me. I'm awake. Now, looking back on it, I'm sure the surgery was already done at this point, but I remember like not being able to communicate, just being trapped inside my body. And then I passed back out, and I woke up again in the ICU. I woke up in the ICU, and my next memory is just actually seeing you and not even seeing you, hearing you. I don't remember seeing you, but I
Mhm.
remember hearing my family in the ICU that morning.
Yeah, so I remember I came to the ICU that Saturday morning, because your surgery was the Friday. I remember you had like, it was because you were in the ICU, you were being woken up every single hour by nurses, and so you were, like, done, you were so tired, like and then when we came in, like, you didn't, you knew that we were in there, but you didn't, like, react, and then when we were like, "Dad, it's us, like, it's your family," like, you actually, like, smiled, like, you, like,
No.
half smiled, and it was, like it was really it was an emotional moment for all of us, but it was just it was kind of crazy, to see you like that. Like, you were half smiling, because your facial nerve on
Yep.
the one side had been damaged, so, like, you couldn't move the one side of your face, so it was like you, like, did this cute little half smile, and I was just so glad to see you, and you were so glad to see us. I'm sure you don't remember exactly, like, your exact emotions from that, but you were very excited to see us after the nurses had been coming in every hour.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I do like, the one thing I remember about the ICU, I do remember hearing your voices. I do remember Maddie having a gymnastics competition that
Mhm.
day, and I remember she was leaving to go to that, and I was just wishing her good luck. And one other thing I'll add, like, yes, it was that was a Saturday morning, the surgery was on a Friday, but the surgery was, 11 and a half hours on Friday, so the surgery lasted most of the day, so I didn't even get to the ICU until late, late, late Friday night.
Correct, correct. Yeah. So we couldn't have gone in that Friday or anything. Okay, kind of moving on from that. How was your initial recovery, like the first 2-ish weeks after the surgery?
Miserable.
Yeah.
So when I woke up, there's certain things that I was prepared for. I knew talking to the doctors beforehand that I wouldn't be able to hear out of my left ear, and I would never be able to hear out of my left ear again unless this whole regenerative medicine thing works out. Ella, figure this out for me. But yeah, I'll never be able to hear, so I was expecting that. The other, my balance nerve was cut, and I knew that going in that I was going to have trouble walking. I was going to have to kind of relearn how to walk, and those things that I was prepared for, like, they were tough to cope with, but they weren't that bad. Like,
Mhm.
I was expecting that. But the thing that I wasn't ready for that kinda kicked my butt is my tongue during my surgery. There is like, what we think happened is there was a bite guard that was in my mouth, and the bite guard came loose or whatever, and during surgery, when I was out, I chewed the heck out of my tongue, and I just remembered my tongue being so painful. Those first 2 weeks, I couldn't really eat anything. Like, I had some soft food. I had some soft food for the most part was all I could put down, just enough to, I guess, keep me going. But I was not I love to eat. I love to eat a lot, and I lost, like, 15 pounds, I think, in 4 days. I lost an incredible amount of weight just because I couldn't eat because of my tongue. And dealing with that was tough. I was in
Yeah.
the hospital for I think 3 days. On that fourth day, I went home and ended up back in the hospital. I had just some scary things happen as soon as I got home, and I won't dive into that, but that was a scary thing that put me back into the ER, and it turned out to be nothing. It turned out to be no big deal what had happened, but it was a scary time. And then like the rest of those, I guess, first 2 weeks were just like setting goals for myself. Like I just want to get up and like take a shower. I can't remember the first shower I took, but it was with mom's help, and it was probably a week or two into recovery. I had a nice beard going. You remember my beard?
I do. I do.
Eh, Yeah,
Yeah.
so I had that going. Gosh, just a lot of pain. Just setting goals like, hey, today I want to walk around this room in the house 5 times. Okay, tomorrow I want to walk to the mailbox and back. Okay, the next time I want to walk around the court and back. And I just kept
Mhm.
trying to set goals that would push me a little further every single day. And I remember like all the love and support that you guys had for me. Mom was home with me, obviously, those first couple weeks, taking care of me, and just you and Maddie just being there to support me, and just my friends and family that came
Mhm.
by to visit. You know, our bud, my one of my buddies, Daryl, came by. Gosh, probably almost every other day,
Yeah.
and just to check on me, and just I remember all the love and support. I remember it being super super hard, but I also remember being like supported by so many people that it just
Yeah.
kinda lifted me up and helped me out.
Do you think you ever pushed yourself, like, too far in those first few weeks? Because I remember your recovery was not linear in those first 2 weeks. Like, you were not like, "Today I'm gonna do, like, 5 laps around the living room, and tomorrow I'm gonna do 6." Like, you had to, like, take steps down at
Y
certain points.
Yeah, you're right, it definitely was not linear. It was definitely, like, up and down, and it would just depend on the day, it would depend on how bad my tongue hurt, how much food I could eat. It was sometimes dependent on how hard I pushed the day before, like, as time passed and I was able to do more and more, like, "Okay, I'm gonna walk around the block now, and then I'm gonna walk a little further," and there were times where I did probably push myself too hard, where, you know, the doctor did tell me to push myself, but if I'm pushing myself to the point where it brings me backwards the next day, then I just need to dial it back a little bit, and I'm still dealing with some of that now. Here we are 7, 8 months out and still dealing with like, okay, how much can I run now? How far can I run? As long as I don't, you know, go too far to where it hurts me the next day, the doctor said, keep pushing, keep pushing, keep pushing.
Alright, so, kinda since then, how has your recovery, progressed?
Good. I told you the things that there are certain things I was prepared for, like the hearing. That was the big one in the balance. I do vestibular therapy, which is basically, if you've never heard of vestibular therapy, think of it as physical therapy, but you're just working on your balance. So I do things where I like it's your balance and your vision because there's like the way that your eyes adjust, at least for me personally, has has been very slow. So things are very, I guess, shaky. It almost feels like if you've ever driven down like a dirt road that's super bumpy and everything in your vision just kind of shakes. But when I'm moving, I get that kind of shaking sensation quite a bit. And so the vestibular therapy kind of trains your eyes and it trains your brain through your eyes by like you focus on objects and look left and right and look up and down and you walk and I do these jumps and turns and stuff. And those work on my vision, they work on my balance. I'm back to working out, I'm back to running. So in terms of like physically, I feel pretty good. There are I told my vestibular therapist and my surgeon this before surgery that the big thing that I want to do is I want to play basketball again, and I'm not there yet. My goal, I texted my buddies that I play basketball with. I told them that my goal is to get there a year out of surgery. So within the next 5 months or so, my goal is to get back on there. I just don't have the balance to do it right now. Did play lightning in our what was it, like, our first quarter celebration or something, or pep rally maybe. I played lightning against my fellow 8th graders, and for the first time in 4 years I lost. I was not the champion
Oh,
at Meads
man.
Mill where I teach. It was a devastating loss, but that I was it felt good to get back out on the basketball court. I couldn't, like, run down the ball and do the things I wanted to do, but I'm getting there. My facial nerve, Ella, you mentioned that, a little bit ago. I That was one of the things I was kind of prepared for, but not fully. They tell you that it's a possibility that your facial nerve will be damaged in the surgery, and it was, and that was a scary thing for me. I literally couldn't move the left side of my face for probably 2 or 3 weeks. That was one of the scariest things for me, and it slowly but surely has been coming back. Now I actually have a doctor appointment this week. I'm going to another it's someone that works at U of M. They specialize, it's kinda like an occupational therapy thing, but they focus on, um like people that have weaknesses in their facial nerve and their facial muscles. I have a thing called synkinesis. So as my facial nerve has been recovering, it didn't recover like the perfect way, like when that your nerve grows when you're or that your nerve learns when you're a kid and you're just learning how to smile and how to move your eyes and raise your eyebrows, things like that. Mine is not perfect. Like the muscles in my face need to be kind of retrained, and, like, just to give you an example, when I close my left eye, I get, like, a strong pull down the bottom of my lip, like, it feels like something is pulling down on my lip, like, to almost just on the left side to make it a frown, and that's that muscle pulling. Well, that muscle's not supposed to pull when you close your eye. So it's about just, I know this week when I go to the therapist, she's gonna give me some things to do that will try to help my brain relearn what my muscles need to do when I smile or raise my eyebrows, and it has gotten so much better, but the process just been so slow. Like, I've experienced some big frustrations because it's been so slow.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So obviously it has affected you like insane ways. Like your life has been completely changed because of it. You've had to adapt. You've had to, like set yourself back. Like I know you're just trying to get back to where you were before the surgery. So yeah. So kind of going off of that, tell me a little bit about your hearing aids.
Okay, so yeah, so one of the other issues I haven't talked much about is hearing, and I mentioned how I would know, or I would not be able to hear out of my left ear going in, and so of course I was researching all these different options of like, that's gonna suck not being able to hear out of my left ear, and it does. That's like one of the most frustrating things for me is still not being able to hear out of that. But I did get hearing aids. It's called a cross hearing aid, CROS, and basically what that does, because my brain will never be able to hear out of my left ear unless, of course, the regenerative medicine thing works out. Let's go, Ella. But anyway, I won't be able to hear out of that left ear. And as a result of that, they have with these cross hearing aids, it's called SSD, single sided deafness. These cross hearing aids will help. They help, like, if someone is to my left side, it's really hard to hear them, obviously, because my left ear can't
Right.
hear. Hearing aid inside the left ear acts as a speaker, and that speaker captures the sound on my bad side, and it actually transfers it over to my good side. So I can hear some things on my bad side. I just hear them out of my right ear, which sounds great. And it is like it helps me a little bit.
Mhm.
It's definitely not like it used to be. Like,
Right.
just to give you an example, like when you hear it only out of one ear, you can't locate where the sound comes from, because when you hear a sound, your brain like adapts to like, hey, the left ear heard it first, then the right ear heard it. So it must be a sound over on the left. So like your brain just knows where that sound came from. You can
Mhm.
locate the sound. I can't do that anymore. And as you can imagine, as a teacher, that can be frustrating when someone saying, "Hey, Mr. Rohrhoff, Mr. Rohrhoff," and I'm just kind of staring around the room like, who the heck is saying my name? But my students have been great. Like, I started this school year kind of telling the students what was going on, and I asked them like, "Hey, if you say Mr. Rohrhoff, like if you could raise your hand, that would be super helpful to me." And whenever they think to do that, they can. And then usually what happens is they don't think to do that, and I don't blame them for that, but they'll say Mr. Rohrhoff, and then they'll be looking at me and they'll see me like looking around the room. And then when they see me looking around the room, then they raise their hand. So there's this like little awkward delay, but like I'm used to it.
Mhm.
I'm not used to it. I'm getting used to it. And it's just one of those things that I have to adapt to.
Yeah, that's funny. We actually just learned about that in psych, like how like the noise reaches one ear, like, slightly before the other ear so you can, like, see where it's coming from. Just thought I should mention that. And then also, you said that you got, hearing aids that were called cross hearing aids. How did you choose between the cross hearing aids and, like, other types of hearing aids? And, like, did you go through, like, trials and stuff? Like, tell me a little bit about that.
So yeah, like when I did research prior to surgery, kind of in preparation and after surgery, I learned there's really two options for people that are in my situation. There's cross hearing aids, and the other option is it's called a BAHA, BAHA, which would be a bone anchored hearing aid. And with the bone anchored hearing aid, what they do is they actually put like a plate, like a metal thing on your skull above the ear, and it uses the vibration. So you would wear this thing like typically, I mean, I've seen people that wear them, they're typically like above the ear. And what they do is like it catches the sound, it's a speaker, and then it uses that sound to vibrate that thing that's implanted in your head, and that transfers it over to the right side. So it's kind of like my cross hearing aid where it transfers it over. It just uses bone conduction to do that instead of using, like really what the cross uses is like Bluetooth. It's not Bluetooth, but it's like Bluetooth what it uses. And I talked to Dr. Welch about like those options, and he would be the one that performs the surgery for Baja, but he said get the hearing aids first, use the cross hearing aids first. And if you like those, then and you want something that may be a little bit better, you can try a cross hearing aid. But that's another invasive procedure. Nothing like it's outpatient. It's not like super complicated. But he said we would want to wait at least a year or two out of surgery before even considering that. So right now I'm with the hearing aids. I did try a couple. I tried two different options at the hearing aid place that I went to. They gave me one, and I said, before I commit to this, I'd like to try another one out. And I ended up liking the second one better. It's called just a Signia Silk IX is what it's called for anyone that is out there listening to this that might be considering hearing aids. Signia Silk IX, but like do your research. There's so much technology, and right now when we are recording this, it's November of 2025. And if you're listening to this like 3 months into the future, there's probably a new technology with hearing aid. It's pretty amazing. So definitely do your research.
Yeah, so you obviously mentioned cons to the hearing aids, like, while we were talking about them. So the best option, if it could magically happen, would just be for your nerve to regrow and your hearing to go back to normal, which is kind of where regenerative medicine comes into this. So medicine is advancing very rapidly, like you mentioned. Like 3 months from now, we could have a whole new like type of technology that could be best for someone else. So yeah, so this is kind of where regenerative medicine comes in, but it is still in very early stages. We'll get more into that in the next episode. And many variations of this regenerative medicine are yet to reach clinical trials. So it is unfortunately extremely unlikely for this type of medicine to be able to help you, dad, within your lifetime. But there is the opportunity for it to help people like you in the future who have had nerve damage and hopefully restore their hearing or like other functions depending on the nerve. Hopefully restore their functions better than your hearing aid can do for your for you for your hearing. So yeah, in the next episodes of this podcast, we'll be exploring regenerative medicine and how it has the potential to help future generations. We will interview a doctor from U of A, and they will give professional advice, professional insight to regenerative medicine. And then we will later in the podcast we will talk about the ways that you can get involved as a listener, as I kind of mentioned this above, if you end up being passionate about the topic of this podcast. So yeah, that pretty much marks the end of our podcast. Our first episode of the Eighth Nerve. Thank you, Dad.
Ella,
Thank
I
you
just
so
want to say
much.
thank you for doing this, and like I just want you to know, and everybody that listens to this to know how proud I am of you for doing this. And I remember when you took the IB personal project class, and you were like talking about different ideas of what you were going to do for your project, and when you said that you were going to do like you were talking about my surgery and that you were going to do something related to that, it just made me so proud because I think Ella, like people like you, as smart and as awesome as you are
Thank
going
you.
to be the people that that do make the world better for someone 20, 30 years from now that goes through what I have to. And then all of a sudden they'll have all these new options of what to do. So thank you for, I guess, drawing awareness to this. Thank you for doing everything you do. I'm so, so, so proud of you.
Well, thank you for that. Yeah, that was kind of the goal of this podcast to bring awareness, like get the word out there. We'll be like talking to an organization who, like in the third episode, we'll be talking to an organization that, like they like do some really cool work. So yeah, I'm very excited to bring awareness to all of these different like organizations and topics. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed the first episode, and I hope you gain some new knowledge about acoustic neuromas and how much they can affect the lives of people who have to deal with them. And I hope to see you back for our next episode. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Ella.
Thank you.